But Asian communities as a whole have a huge problem with anti-blackness. And I don't think many black people are exposed to how bad the situation is with Asian racism. Just want to kind of be like, oh yeah, we're all victims of white supremacy. Nah, miss me with all of that. Miss me with all of that, because we might be victims of white supremacy, but we're also victims of Asian hate. Okay? And until Asians can start being honest about what goes on in their households, can start being honest about how much they have a vehement hatred towards black people for no good reason, and start unpicking some of that anti-blackness that exists within their communities, and this is Southeast Asian and East Asian, until they can start being honest about that, we're not going to make any progress.
If you knew what you were made of, then we would save the world.
Welcome to the King Mono Show. And yeah, it's been a long time since I've uploaded any kind of content to this channel. This was supposed to be my low effort, high volume channel, and I put a few videos out and I realized even those I was putting far too much effort towards. So I'm going to try and put more content out on this channel, because I did realize one thing, and that's that I do have an opinion about a lot of topics that I don't talk about. And I feel like in our current political climate, it's actually becoming quite important that I'm a little bit more open with my kind of political views on certain things. I'm all about, Black empowerment. I'm all about unity, Pan-African unity, and global Black unity, and the strengthening of and the uplifting of the global melanated community. And I'm finding with my current release schedule, at least at the moment, it's down quite a lot. Essentially, I'm in the process of writing a book, and I've got some other projects going on at the moment. And I'd like to have a bit more contact with you guys in terms of the content that I put out. So I'm going to start using this channel. Long story short, I'm not very good at that, by the way. Long story short, I'm going to start trying to use this channel a little bit more. So this is the King Mono Show channel, and this channel really is going to be kind of like more React content. In fact, I'm going to try and make it almost solely React content and maybe clips from the main channel, just to keep myself ticking over in terms of the content schedule, in terms of getting new stuff out to you guys. So that's what I'm going to try and do on this channel. One other thing that I'm going to be doing on this channel is I'm going to be responding to certain people who have been getting a free ride at the moment. You guys know that I've got loads of channels who kind of like make critiques of the content that I put out. I live rent-free in their head, which is fine, whatever. We know it comes with the territory. And I don't respond to them because they're not worthwhile, and they're definitely not even going to get any airtime on my main channel. But I think when I get bored on the occasion, I might do some React schlop to them, because that's what kind of they're worth to me. React schlop. That's the amount of time and effort that I think these kind of people deserve. Nothing more than React slop. So they're going to get React slop from the content that they put out, where I'm just going to essentially look at what they put out. If it's valid, I'll give it a thumbs up. But more often than not, it's going to be trash. So I'm going to clown it on this channel. So if you're looking forward to some of that, I did a little bit of that earlier on with a few channels that I've had to kind of like put in their place, like E7 and the community of skeptics. I think I'll do that more often. So if you're looking forward to that, feel free to tune into this channel, okay? Where I'll be doing more React slop content, more contentious stuff. I don't really care. This is the secondary channel. It doesn't really bother me that much. So that's all gonna go here. So if you're into all of that stuff, then hey, this is the place for you. Now, preamble out of the way, and I'm not going to do that preamble every video, certainly, because that's going to become very, very boring very quickly. I'm going to be reacting to a video that I've had in my watch later on YouTube for a little while now. It's called the Pick Me Asian Epidemic. I haven't watched this, so this is going to be literally a fresh watch, but I do know that the channel it's coming from, or the channel that it was produced on, which is called Antonio Talks, I tend to like his content. I like his approach. I like his worldview. I think he's got his head screwed on correctly. So I've got time. In fact, there's going to be a few people. You guys are going to start to realize that I do align quite heavily with a few content creators out there, some American content creators out there. I wish there were more, you know, pushing essentially a more pro-black ideology, which is just something we don't get enough of. And I'm proudly pro-black, and I think people need to stop being coy about the fact that they're pro-black. And pro-black is not adjacent or juxtaposed to pro-white. Pro-white is a completely different thing. We could talk about essentially the origins of white supremacy and the fact that the whole ideology of whiteness is based on exclusion and hate, and that is not what blackness is based on. But that's a whole other discussion. The point being, I like this channel. I haven't listened to this video, so I'm going to watch it, pause it, react, and we'll see if it makes good content. If it makes good content, then hey, you're going to be watching this online. If it really is super low quality schlop, then essentially I'm talking to myself right now. So let's see how this goes.
So I've mentioned this on my channel previously. Minorities in America, they will turn a blind eye to racism as long as the white people view them better than the black people. Of course, it's not all, but it's very prevalent. If you're watching this video right now, if you're Indian or if you're Asian, you all got this one friend that wants to be white. He makes jokes clowning his own race, and they just fiend for the white approval. And like I say, bro, white supremacy has did a number on many groups of people in the world. We see it so much in the black community with the raccoons, you know, and it's just becoming more and more prevalent with minorities in America. So we got a tweet right here that says, is he eating with his hands? And it's a photo.
So I'm gonna just pause it right there really quickly and say, actually, I think he's underplaying it a little bit here. I think black people need to start being honest about the, I'm gonna call it the Asian problem, for want of a better word. A lot of Asians are raised in very racist households. Once again, I'm not saying all, but I would say a majority. I'd quite openly say a majority of Asians are raised in anti-black racist households. So they're not uniformly racist against everybody, because a lot of people will turn around and say, oh, well, blah, 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 racist too. It's like, no. There's a difference between kind of like being tribalist or being kind of ethnocentric, which a lot of black people are. A lot of black people are tribalist and a lot of black people are ethnocentric. And that's when essentially you just think that what you are is kind of like is the most important, preserving your heritage, preserving your culture, and you kind of look down on other cultures. That's not got anything to do with racism. That's just something that all human groups have. And I had a long discussion about this earlier in the week with a evolutionary psychologist, and we kind of like really kind of like got down into the details of how this occurs. But essentially, that's an aside. The Asian communities in America and in the UK, I know the one in America is more kind of like East Asian, the one in the UK is more South Asian, but Asian communities as a whole have a huge problem with anti-blackness. And I don't think many black people are exposed to how bad the situation is with Asian racism. I've been exposed to it firsthand. I grew up in a very mixed community. So I grew up in a community that was literally 30% Asian, 30% black, 30% white. And I noticed a massive difference between the way I was with my white friends and the way I was with my Asian friends and the way their families were. I had no problem with most of the white friends that I had at throughout primary school. My best friend was a young white boy, obviously, you know, and we got on like a house on fire, and our parents were fantastic friends, and we were always at each other's houses, literally 24/7. Now, I had loads of Asian friends, but the thing that I picked up on, and it took me getting a little bit older to pick up on the fact, was the fact that when it came to the Asians, their parents were racist. They hid it really well, but then I started becoming a bit more savvy to it when I just noticed their reaction when I turn up at the door and this, that, and the other, and there'd be this big song and dance. Like everyone at that age, everyone was in and out of each other's houses, particularly in the area that I grew up in. But the Asians, you weren't in and out of their house. They wouldn't let you, they didn't like having young black people at their house. So, and this has carried on. This hasn't stopped. This hasn't abated. Even when I became a teacher, I used to speak to students regularly, and they just didn't understand why their parents were so racist. All these Asian students grew up in households where their parents would openly say very strongly racist things about black people. Now, this is a bizarre circumstance to me as a black person, because as a black person, we don't deride other communities for no good reason. The only time you'll actually get what appears to be or a semblance of racism in the black community is when we've identified another community that is persecuting us. So in the case of whites persecuting us, we'll then respond to that racism by essentially being very defensive and sometimes offensive, particularly in my case, against those communities. Same thing with Asians. But if there's like some random community out there, like I always like to raise that example of Inuits, for instance, people, there's people who live in igloos and whatever. I'm not going to randomly just hate them because their culture is different. And yet globally, you'll find people hate the Black community for no other reason than the fact that we're Black and our culture is different to theirs. And I know a lot of negative media gets put out about the Black community, but I don't really think that's an excuse because, for instance, we get a lot of negative press and negative media about Aboriginal people in Australia, okay, about the fact that they're alcoholic and they're downtrodden and down and out and this and the other. I don't hate them for that. I don't look at Aborigines and, oh, they're freaking Aborigines, oh, they disgust me. No, maybe I'm a little bit more culturally sensitive to their oppression. I'm also aware of the fact that Aborigines or Aboriginal Australians are members of the Black race. So I'm aware of all that. But that aside, even Native Americans who have been kind of like riddled with the same kinds of stereotypes of being alcoholics and this, that, and the other, I don't hate them for it. I don't randomly hate, Bolivians or this, that, and the other, and all of these kind of Indonesians and all these kind of communities where there's poverty and there's things. I don't randomly hate them. I don't just hate them, but yet this anti-Blackness that seems to permeate the planet and these communities that have never come into contact with Black people or sometimes have, and it is hate us for no good reason. We need to talk about the Asian problem. We need to be real about it. We need to not minimize it, and we need to stop giving them a easy pass, because I think we do that quite a lot in the Black community, where we just want to kind of be like, oh yeah, we're all victims of white supremacy. Nah, miss me with all of that, because we might be victims of white supremacy, but we're also victims of Asian hate. Okay. And until Asians can start being honest about what goes on in their households, can start being honest about how much they have a vehement hatred towards Black people for no good reason, and start unpicking some of that anti-Blackness that exists within their communities, and this is Southeast Asian and East Asian, until they can start being honest about that, we're not going to make any progress. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Diatribe done.
There are many American foods that are ate with the hand. Pizza, fries, burgers, like hot dogs. So because they want to eat rice with their hands, it's automatically wrong. But when people do that, it's okay, bro.
I'm now this is gonna sound controversial, but I kind of think eating rice with your hands is kind of wild. I'm not gonna lie. I know a lot of people do that in Africa, and I also look. Let's talk about the history of utensils. That is kind of like the history of cutlery. Yeah, cutlery was invented because in Europe, a lot of European races suffered from leprosy, which was basically your hands and your fingers kind of falling apart because of their really, really poor hygiene of certain groups in Europe. What they found is that it was very, unhealthy to eat with their hands, because you'd essentially be self-cannibalizing because parts of you were flaking off of your food. So they invented this concept of eating with knives and forks. Before then, I don't think you'd find any population globally eating with any kind of cutlery. Perhaps maybe the Far East Asians with chopsticks. I'm not sure how far back into history they go. I'd imagine that they were needed, but other than that, people ate with their hands. I know it's a little bit wild, but I kind of feel like it's kind of rare to see people eating rice with their hands. And the only time I kind of do come in contact with it, I know it's still very prevalent in the Asian community. Even Asians, I don't know Asians who eat rice with their hands. When you go to Asian restaurants and stuff like that, it only tends to be like, I had a business in a business center once, and there was a Asian company that used to sell solar panels. And aside from the fact that their staff used to steal my stuff out of the fridge, that's the truth, by the way. But they had this kind of like a large amount of people who were very new to the country. In the UK, we call them freshies, essentially. But people who are kind of like new immigrants, fresh immigrants to the country as their staff. So they had this kind of like loads of them, like 20 of them. And when they used to have lunch, I made a mental note. I was like, oh my God, they all eat rice with their hands. That's not really something you see a generational or, someone who's kind of like, a naturalized British Asian doing, or I'd imagine naturalized American. So I feel like you have to be honest here. This mayor, I feel like he's rage baiting a bit here, because even though it's something that we might do back home, I don't think it's something that Asians do once they've been settled in the UK for any stretch of time. I don't think it's anything that their parents would even do. So I don't know. Is he rage baiting here? this is kind of my thoughts.
Someone quote tweeted this and said, "I will speak on this again because I am Asian. I eat rice almost every day, and never once in my life have I eaten it with my hand. Use a spoon. This is disgusting." Hey,
I mean, this is disgusting, is strong, but I kind of agree with her. I think this is prime rage baiting by Mayor Mondani. Let's be honest,
bro. She tap dancing, man. She want that white approval, boy. This is her, and I mean, it just looks like she wants to be white, in my opinion. Some of you American Asians really need to stop pretending you speak for Asia. You're not Asian. You're American with Asian ancestry. That's it. Having immigrant grandparents doesn't give you a PhD in other people's culture. Asia has thousands of cultures, hundreds of ways of living. Just because you've got Asian blood doesn't mean you get to call other Asians disgusting. You're not cultured. You're just allowed, you know what? Hey, and I applaud that, bro. I feel like every group of people is going to have that kiss up, you know, the raccoons, and we call them raccoons in here, you know. I don't know what y'all call them, but everybody has that group of people that just you just make.
We got too many coons in our community. Don't have to name names, but you know, you got, you know, that Jesse Lee Peterson, Hodge twins, you got that Fresh and Fit. There's a whole bunch of clown coons out there, man. So like it's a it's a wild environment, man. But yeah, we got too many of them, so yeah, you don't want to see that. I mean, I don't think that girl with her comment saying it's a bit disgusting was you know, well, we can't call it raccooning, but you know, selling out her race. I think it's I'd say that it was strong, but I don't know.
Make us sick, bro. What are you doing? Here we go. Another quote tweet. As an Asian, I feel I have authority on rice. Eating rice with your hands is gross, strange, and barbaric. Nobody in my family has ever done this. He acts like utensils were never invented. And this is him. The picture's a little blurry, but he's Asian, okay? Gen Z conservative. Another tweet we have, you are Asian, you're American. As an Asian from Asia, I have authority to tell you that Asians have always eaten rice with their hands. And it's pictures of just people eating rice with their hands, bro.
And like I said, I mean, this kind of supports my view that it is something that's done, but it's more something that probably done on the continent as opposed to in the West. So yeah, a bit, yeah.
Clearly nothing wrong with that. Someone quoted this tweet and said, Koreans, Japanese, and Chinese don't eat rice with our hands. It's only Southeast Asians. In my opinion right here, he's trying to imply that these Asians at the top are better than the Southeast Asians. And this is him, by the way, man. Oh my God, this dude, I think I saw Young Don do a video on him, bro. So, you know, yeah. Some white lady replied under that tweet and said, as my Singaporean friend used to say, the jungle Asians. Laughing emojis. 6,000 likes. That same lady from the first tweet, she ended up like replying under it. She said, this is accurate. There are jungle Asians, Southeast Asians, island people, and there are fancy Asians, Taiwanese, Chinese, Japan. Man, I
see. And this, I think this is quite good because it does highlight, you know, Asian, first of all, is not a culture. Okay, I'm not even gonna, and it's not a race. All right, it's a landmass that contains lots of different people, lots of different groups, lots of different religious outlooks, and different kind of cultural outlooks, everything. And there's a lot of racism that exists even within that expanse of land. Okay. Talking about East Asians, okay, or Far East Asians, there, you know, they have a very particular flavor of white supremacy. Yeah, they have a very particular flavor of it there, but it's very, very strong and it permeates very hard. So they're talking about the fact that because they rice probably with chopsticks, and the people they're calling jungle Asians would probably be like your Indonesians and stuff like that, who they look down upon. And they're browner than them. They're significantly browner. You know, some of them are incredibly dark to this very day. And there has been a unspoken about, almost written out of history, ethnic cleanse that took place in Far East Asia. There were black communities in China, Japan, Korea, all of these areas. There were black communities prior to the world wars, and there aren't really any now. There aren't really any black people now. And even just finding dark-skinned Asians, they tend to be in these communities, by the way, I'm talking about, they tend to be pushed to the very extremes of poverty in those nations, to the point where people don't even believe that they exist because they have so little exposure, so little coverage. Their existence is almost kind of like just denied them. And this is just that flavor of racism that exists in these parts of the world that goes unspoken. These are the people who don't have a voice. These are people who don't have the story, and these are people who don't have any protection. So it's nice when I say nice, but I do mean, I'm saying nice ironically, but I do mean it. It's nice when this kind of ugly side of Asian culture begins to rear its head, because then it forces us to have a conversation about what's actually going on in that part of the world.
I can guarantee you they all view y'all niggas the same way though. You know what I'm saying? The lady ended up replying, "Fancy Asians, ha ha ha, 2,000 likes." And then she said, "Inner Asian racism actually goes hard. We're funny." I mean, god damn, get off her dick, my nigga. Shit, golly. Look at this comment, y'all. "The browns of Asians don't count. It's known." Hey, bro, this thread is crazy. It's like very... If you Asian, it's gonna make you mad. I'm not gonna read no more of this, bro. But it's mainly other Asians feeding into it. So this is a screenshot from a TikTok. And it says true Asian, which I believe is Korean, Chinese, and Japanese. And then chopped Asians are basically all the South, Asian countries, bro. Which is, and like I say, bro, throughout all time in history, the lighter.
And I think this is symptomatic, once again, of the global nomenclature and topography involved with dividing this world or this globe, this kind of place, this realm we live into city or towns, cities, countries, and continents arbitrarily. What's really being highlighted there is that there is a distinctive difference in culture, cultural outlook, ethnographic outlook between these Asian nations. Now, obviously, the ones that I said have this strong kind of this strong flavor of white supremacy. They'll look at as, we're superior to them. But ultimately, the name Asia to kind of like name this entire region is very, very arbitrary. Okay. And you could remove it. And there's so much problems that have been created in our modern world by simply having these borders drawn up and these groupings decided upon, normally externally. So most of the nations' names are exonyms. They're names that were, thrust upon those nations from the outside. They weren't what those people called themselves originally. They don't even, so they're being governed by a people that often, I take Nigeria as an example, hundreds of languages being spoken and hundreds of ethnic groups, all within a single landmass, and all asked to identify beneath this single banner, which to many of them is arbitrary and to some of them is offensive. For the Igbo, for instance. So these are the kind of like complexities that have been created, and these are the lasting effects of the empires, imperialism and colonialism around the world. These are kind of the embers of destruction that continue to really kind of poison the well of people just getting on earth. It's hard because these are the remnants of that destructive behavior, which is just thrust people into each other's space and force people to identify beneath banners that they have really no ancestral tie to. It's just very, very complex and very messy, but it just made me think of that.
Whiteness is considered the standard, like it's the best. I don't know why, but yeah. And if you're darker, you got some brown, some melanin in you, you're at the bottom, bro. It's always been like that.
I have not talked about this topic
Well, it's not always been like that. So let's quickly define there. That's a result of, or a lasting impact of, imperialism. Okay, imperialism and colonialism really did imprint white supremacy upon the world. And I don't think it's something that predates that. I'm not saying there wasn't aspects of ethnocentrism and colorism in the past, but you find that power and outlooks on things like ethnocentrism and colorism existed on a pendulum before imperialism. Imperialism really codified those things into laws. They made They made it. It was the first. It was a time where it was inscribed and written into people's behavioral practices and written into law, where that advantage, and that's what really made it stick. Okay, I am going to get more if I identify as this and if I deride people who look like this. So it's a little bit different, and I'd be very careful just how far we push that back into history. As someone who obviously history is kind of my passion, I know it's not as old as people think it is.
In a while, but I came across a video of this Filipino girl that moved to Australia, and she found her Australian boyfriend, and he's Caucasian. I'm all about bringing culture together. I think it's amazing. People are interested about the Filipino culture. I'm like, hell yeah, this is what it is. But I think I just drew the line when she posted a video of her boyfriend or husband, I don't know what they are now, and she captions it, "Hey future kids, I've just secured your blue eyes and a better nose." I know that this is an ongoing thing, and I can't speak about someone's experience, but I remember when I was in school, this is the biggest thesis I have in one of my paper, and I did a lot of
a better nose. Oh man, see, and obviously I'm going to take exception to that, because kind of like Filipinos, out of all Asians, and most Asians have got recent black ancestry, particularly with kind of like Negrito populations. Filipinos even still have a small amount of Negrito populations still present on the islands, but even up until recent history, you had groups that were identifiably black in the Philippines, and black people were dominant in the Philippines until recently, until the Spanish came in and did their thing. But the point I was going to raise is that the features of the Filipinos, different groups retain different features of their kind of like ancestry depending on the amount. And you can see people in the Philippines, they have quite broad noses, really round noses, like the guy who's speaking at the moment. And if he was he essentially, he could, with dark skin, he would and curly hair, he would pass for a black person without having to change anything else on his kind of like facial phenotype. And I think there's a lot of shame that comes with that. I think they're aware of the fact that their features in the Philippines are more black adjacent or more Afro adjacent as opposed to white adjacent. And I think you have this problem actually throughout Far East Asia. A lot of kind of like Chinese people kind of like have these kind of like features that they share with Africans, and it causes them so much internal conflict. And it's just kind of sad. It's kind of like, you do realize by the time your eyes are blue and your nose is completely straight and your lips are, I'm guessing you want thin lips as well, you will no longer look Asian. You'll no longer look Asian. You've lost all of your identifiers. And I just think, it's good we're talking about this, because so often there's so much emphasis that's placed on, black people, self-hating the black community, X, Y, and Z. And obviously we only speak about that because we don't speak about other communities very often. But one of the things I like to highlight to my community quite a lot is the fact that actually when it comes to acceptance of our features, black people are the most accepting people of their features on this planet. And I always speak about the fact that yes, black people bleach, but if you look at the rate that black people bleach in comparison to the rates of bleaching in the Asian nations, it's not even comparable. It's endemic in Asian nations. They sell bleach and skin lightening creams off the shelf, and everyone uses them daily. Everyone uses them daily. A lot of these people are supposed to be naturally more melanated than what they present, but they've been using skin lightening creams since childhood right up into adulthood. That is a fact. If you want to research, Fair and Lovely and that whole skin lightening industry across the Asian nations, then feel free to do that. And it goes on, things like people putting, collagen in their lips and this, that, and the other, and all of these things to change their facial features. And black people do it the least. They're the most accepting of the features that they've been given. We definitely don't do things like surgery, which is rife in Far East Asia, where people kind of will do like the surgery to remove the epicantic fold from their eyes and this, that, and the other. We don't do any of that. in Africa, and we don't do anything, and it's very, very rare amongst the black community in general. So I think we do go really hard on ourselves, but in reality, we don't need to, you know?
Research, and I read books and studies about it, especially things that has to do with colonial mentality in the Philippines and the ideation of whiteness, and not just skin color whiteness, but the idea of what whiteness can bring to the Philippines and the social status that can give you. A lot of Filipinos, when they look at someone who's white, they already correlate that to someone who's better and better in a lot of aspects
That's
in life.
worldwide.
Like
That is literally worldwide, bro. Black community, we see that. You know what I'm saying? Like like colorism in the black community, featureism in the black community. If you got a big nose, it's ugly. You got big lips, it's ugly. You know what I'm saying? Your skin darker, it's ugly. But if you got a skinny nose, you know what I'm saying? If you got lighter skin, you know, this shit is worldwide, bro.
And just to kind of like add to that, because in the black community, we're so phenotypically diverse, where actually you can have a straight nose and thin lips and be jet black. Okay, that's very, very normal. You can have a really broad nose and really large lips and be really light skinned, and then you've got everything in between. So it's kind of like with the black people in the black community, having those features like narrow noses, narrow lips doesn't mean that we're adjacent to white. Okay, it doesn't mean that we're, you know, that you even have any white content, because Africa is kind of the home of global phenotypic diversity. It has all of those features that sit kind of like, you know, latent within the community. So we have all of those features sitting there, but that doesn't divert from what Antonio just said. Doesn't divert the fact of what Antonio said in and around the fact that the features that are more adjacent to the European aesthetic are the ones that are appreciated. And the features that are kind of further away are the ones that we in the black community, we try to take more pride in, you know, because that person's more black, because they've got more black features. And it's kind of like, no, it's all black features, but we're protecting these ones because they're the ones that are derided. They're the ones that are looked down upon, not because they're more black than the other ones. And it's just kind of like important to know that. And even going down to complexion. Okay, you can have, I've got uncles and aunties birthed from the same parents, and one of them's jet black and one of them's really light skinned. I've got kids, you know, and the difference in their complexion range is massive. It just comes with the territory of being a black person. We are phenotypically very, very, very diverse. And unfortunately, we're only really allowed to celebrate those features that are overtly different from the Europeans' features, or at least we feel like that's the case. It's interesting. It's a very interesting dynamic.
Jobs. In one of the papers that I read, a lot of Filipinos subconsciously try to reach that level. It is not new. If you just go to the Philippines, go to any kind of store, every soap is whitening soap. Everything is all about making your skin whiter. Actors and actresses are revered for having more Eurocentric features, and if they're half white, oh my god, they're just, doesn't matter if they have talent or not, doesn't even matter if they can speak the language or not, they'll be a really famous Filipino actor. Besides the point, I know where the
I'm just going to say, like in the UK in particular, mixed race is the new black. And in fact, you have to be very careful in the UK. A lot of the statistics that they're putting out about black inclusion and this, that, and the other, a lot of them are predicated on using biracial data and classifying that therefore as being black. So there is, because I know there was a recent study that was done that said that 53%, because it went mad in the kind of like the far right, went crazy, like GBN News and what's that party, Reform, they went crazy because I think there was like 53% of UK adverts contain black people. I was like, actually, they've obviously included biracial as black, because I can tell you right now, as someone, I don't really watch TV, but I just know for a fact there's just no way that over half of UK commercials has a black person in it. But I think once you include mixed race into that, then yeah, because mixed race has become, you know, black people achieve so much, black and mixed race people achieve so much in the UK that it makes sense for them to basically make room for including these people because it's kind of like people know what they're witnessing, they know where the talent comes from, but at the same time, how can we include it in the most palatable way? I know, let's get a mixed race person as opposed to a black.
hurt is coming from, especially because a lot of those papers and books that I've read has talked about that. But I think the goal now, and I can't keep talking about the past. I just need to be able to talk about the present. And so the goal now is like, especially my own personal goal is to elevate me being Filipino, elevate me and my culture.
I feel for y'all, man. Y'all gotta start checking these bootlickers in the Asian community, dog, for real.
Asian racism is always like slightly, just a little bit more accepted for some weird reason.
One reason is our own people. Let me show you something. Think it stops
y'all
there?
doing that too,
No.
man.
Joke about Asians eating pets in the year 2025 getting hundreds of thousands of likes, more likely than you think. I censored that guy's face because I'm 90% sure they're a minor and hopefully they grow, but he is not an isolated incident. There are so many Asians who are quick to use stereotypes as the foundation of their jokes, of their humor. Whether people want to admit it or not, this perpetuates racism.
I mean, see, this is where I have a little bit of deference, because I was having a conversation earlier in the week, and this subject came up about, you know, Asians having a problem with the way they're depicted in the media. And the subject then was about masculinity. It's kind of like, oh, they don't like the way they're depicted. And I'm just like, well, that's kind of how they depict themselves. Like, they can't want to be depicted in the same masculine way as, say, a, you know, Black American or an African, because in our cultures, traditional masculinity is really kind of revered. Okay, we don't really have much kind of like ambiguity when it comes to the roles of men and women. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's just what it is. Now, he's talking about the fact that it's racism, that kind of like in the Asian community, they're joking about eating cats, but they do eat cats in Asia. They still do. It's not, and it's not taboo. Okay, I'm sure he can correct me about which nations in particular eat cats and dogs, but it's like, you know, in 2025, making jokes about it, you know, eating cats and dogs, it's really distasteful. It's like, but you still do it, right? It's not like this is something that was outlawed in the 1960s and now as a result you don't do it anymore. You're saying you don't like the aesthetic of it. This is the point. As an Asian, you don't like the aesthetic of people making fun of the fact that you eat cats and dogs, but you do eat cats and dogs. Okay, that's not a stereotype. Okay, I saw a video very recently, just someone who's touring, no mockery, whatever, and cats, you know, it's hang up, skinned, and on the menu. They do eat a lot of things that we would classify as peculiar. Now, people might come to the West and be like, you eat cows? That's disgusting. You eat pigs? That's disgusting. I don't eat swine, by the way. You know, you eat birds? That's disgusting. You know, people from India might come across who are, you know, a lot of them are vegetarian over there, and they might be, you know, it might be vile to them, the fact that we eat a lot of these things. All right, you have to stand on business of what your culture is. What you can't do is acknowledge the fact that this is done and then say it's racism when people say this is what you guys do. That's the one thing I'm kind of like, what are we doing here? Just so I mean, like, what you're complaining, calling it racist that they joke about the fact that you eat cats, but you do eat cats, and until you stop eating cats, people are gonna continue making jokes about it, and that's not racist, bro. I'm sorry, that's you're seeking victimhood there. I'm not feeling it.
It normalizes it. Comedy is powerful. Comedy transcends.
That's what I be saying about these. Oh, bro, just a word can say it's funny.
Negative ways. Asians are more than capable of being funny without relying on racial stereotypes as a crutch. I like to use Nat Community Channel on YouTube as a great example of that.
And by the way, comedy has always been based on making fun of racial stereotypes. Okay, you can all think back to Eddie's famous skit, you know, what have you done for me lately? You know, come on, man, like racial stereotypes has been being done. Like Black people are the kings of comedy. Okay, Black Americans, I'm not Black American, but hey, I grew up in Black American comedy. You know, they're the kings of comedy. They're the originators of, you know, proper stand-up comedy. All right. And the the whole genre, you know, existed to make fun of stereotypes that existed within different groups. That is the base of comedy. Once again, because you don't find it palatable, you're saying, oh, well, you know, it's racism, we can be better than that. And then you show, and then you want to kind of like project this, I would say, false image of Asia to the rest of the world. It's kind of like, what are you doing here? Do you understand what I mean? Like, that's not your culture. Stand on business, be proud of your culture. As Black people, we stand on business. We are proud of our culture. People might, in fact, in the Asian community, Black culture is copied and looked down upon at the same time. It's like you look down on the people that deliver the culture, but at the same time, so much of your culture is just based, you know, K-pop, all of these kind of like the Japanese hip-hop culture, all of this stuff, it's all based on Black culture, the break dancing culture, just all better, but you don't give any Black people any credit for the things that you steal from them, for the style, for the culture that's stolen from them. And then you complain when people actually highlight what is your real culture, you know, eating cats, which isn't, like I said, I don't think it's a bad, I don't think anyone has the right to condemn someone who eats a cat who isn't a vegetarian. It's just another, everyone's eating animals of some sort. Do you understand what I mean? So it's kind of like all of this is just like, yeah, miss me.
I grew up with her. So funny. You don't have to use an accent. So why do some Asians do this? A lot of the time, it has to do with wanting to appeal.
And once again, using an accent is not racist. It's like, have you seen how many Nigerian skits there are? You know, from we've been doing this from back in the day, like where we, you know, we're using strong Nigerian, and that's what makes the comedy relatable to us. We can see ourselves, like you're seeing it as racism because you want. It sounds to me like you want to present it as white. That's what it sounds like. You want to present as white and Western, you know, and, you know, culturally acceptable to a Western palate, and any kind of like reference to your actual culture is people being racist. So it sounds to me like you've got a bit of work to do in terms of just being proud and being able to kind of like take the mick out of your culture and not see it as people being racist and deriding you. So it sounds like there's a lot of growth. And I think this happens a lot in the Asian community. There's a lot of growth that needs to be done, and there's a lot of shame. And one thing I think that you guys, or at least a lot of people I can see talking from the Asian community, could take from the Black community is learning to have a bit more pride in who you are and not be ashamed of who you are, and not deriding everything that isn't, you know, a mirror of white Western ideals. Being proud of the differences, being proud of those things that make you distinctly Asian. I'm very proud of the things that make me distinctly Yoruba, distinctly Nigerian, distinctly African, and distinctly Black. I'm proud of all of those things. No one could ever make me feel any shame about our contribution to global culture. No one could ever make me feel any shame, but I feel like you guys sometimes feel really shameful about what your culture is. So it feels like racism when people point out what your culture is, or even when your own people point out what your culture is, you take it as something to be embarrassed about. And I'm just like, you know, maybe there's some growth that you guys need to be there. Take a bit more pride in who you are, you know?
Other communities or gain approval from them. It's easy to assimilate into another culture if you betray your own. Another reason is that there are opportunities for material gain. There are many creators, comedians who've built a platform off of racialized humor, off of exaggerated accents, making fun of their parents, and they get rewarded.
This happens in the Black community too. Y'all remember old boy, damn, what's his name? King Batch. You know, he used to do watermelon fried chicken jokes all the time, you know? And when I was young, it was like, okay, it was, I ain't.
See, you know what? This is the thing. This is where we might be a bit different, because I mess with King Batch, man, from a long time ago, you know, from ages ago, from literally when he just dropped on YouTube. I was like, this dude is so talented and hilarious. And I've never felt his self-deprecating humor was kind of like him laughing at us. So I view this a little bit differently.
I'm not gonna be that type of person that be like King Beck wasn't funny, because for his time he was funny. That was funny at the time. But looking back, it was like it was lame, bro. You was doing corny little shit like that to, appease other audience. He got big off of that, and we still see it today. You got people just man, hey, this shit is real.
For it, they get brandy.
I mess with Antonio. Like, I like your channel. I like it. I like your outlooks, and I like the fact that you stand on business. So this is how you feel about it. But I differ. I beg to differ. I think King Bach is funny. I don't get the raccoon vibe from his content. I don't. That's just me being personal, and I mean being honest. I think he's actually quite unashamedly black, and I think he's able to draw out the comedy about black stereotypes without kind of like laughing at black people, kind of like we laughing with him. At least that's I could be looking through rose tinted lenses, because I feel like I've been on that journey from very early, but I could be wrong, but there you go.
They get opportunities to perform at big stages, the Golden Globes. Unfortunately, I think that Asian racism will continue to not be taken seriously. It's not just these aspects. There are others, like the model minority myth. Having positive stereotypes is not a good thing, trust me. Those rob us of the nuances in our communities, and that's a whole nother bag of rice to open for a different day. Every time an Asian decides to use an exaggerated accent and stereotypes to build their platform, a Japanese government official denies their war crimes.
Things I did as an Asian kid to
See, I think that's weak. I didn't agree with anything that dude said, to be totally honest with you. Like exaggerated accents. Do you know how many guys I'm subscribed to who use exaggerated Nigerian accents? A-Dot's my boy. Like, come on, man. Like, we've built, a lot of people have built I think what you need to look at once again is what is the driving motivation, and what is the kind of like, you can always feel the energy and the ethos of someone's motive in the kind of comedy that they make. And if I feel like you're just trying to disgrace us, a good example I can give you is Lenny Henry. Okay, Lenny Henry has recently started lamenting a lot of his comedy shows that he made back in the day. Now, everybody growing up in the UK knew that Lenny Henry was a sellout. Sorry if you're related to Lenny Henry and you're watching this. It's a fact. We all knew he was a sellout. He loved making comedy, deriding black culture, laughing at black people, and he was lauded because of it. The BBC absolutely loved him. He'd always be performing at, children in need and this, that, and the other. And he made his bag off of making black culture the butt of the joke. Two black comics can make the same joke about how their parents beat them, okay? And one black comic is going to be embraced and loved by the community, and we're going to all find it hilarious. And another black comic is going to do the same joke, and we're not going to like them. We're not going to mess with them. Why is that the case? It's because we can pick up whether or not you're trying to laugh with us as a community, or we can pick up the fact that you're trying to make people laugh at us and say, our culture is flawed, our upbringers are flawed, and I wish I'd been raised this way. That's the difference that we got from hearing someone, the difference between a Lenny Henry and the real McCoy. Okay, that's the difference. It wasn't the fact that any was trying to paint our community through a rose tinted lens like this, the guy who was just speaking was saying. It's not about trying to make it seem like your community is perfect. It's all about the ethos in the message that you deliver. And when that ethos is based on you essentially trying to make your bag off deriding your own people will pick up on that energy and they'll hold it against you. So,
I remember going on this trip to Asia with one of my friends who was Malaysian, and she was just so proud of being Malaysian. I was like, oh wow, I'm Asian, but I don't really think I'm proud of my culture. And so that kind of sent me on this journey of learning how to be proud of who I am and the family that I've come from. Because not being proud of your culture, it's kind of denying your family background and where your parents are coming from and who they are as well. And so it's been a really interesting journey, kind of coming back to reconnect with my roots. And
see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You have to, I think ultimately the first stop that needs to be made by a lot of these people who are getting offended about what's happening in and amongst the Asian community is have a self-check like this woman about how proud are you of your culture itself. You know, how proud are you of being Asian? Because I think a lot of, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I've definitely ventured across or ventured upon a lot of Asian creators who I know are not proud of being Asian, who I know would prefer to be something else. And that's often the voice that you hear coming out of them when they're making these, you know, they're making these critiques. So you just have to be kind of like very careful of that. Start by being proud of your culture, being proud of, you know, how your culture presents itself. And then you're not going to be sensitive when someone makes a joke, for instance, about people eating, you know, eating cat or eating, you know, puffer fish or whatever other, you know, exotic and strange things to my Western palate or my African palate that you eat, because there's a lot of things in every culture that people are just going to think are rather strange that you consume. You know, in Nigeria, you have this thing called bushmeat, yeah, and bushmeat is just basically anything, yeah, because, you know, the whole concept of starvation when everything is around you is not one that is readily accepted, you know, particularly in Africa. So we could be poor, but the idea of being starving is ridiculous. So if you go to the certain rural areas, they eat bushmeat, and bushmeat is like anything that walks, grab that, you chuck that in the grill and you nyam that, yeah. That's so I'm not going to sit here judging, you know, you just have to be accepting of the things that take place in your home nations.
If you Asian, how do you feel about this? I can guarantee you probably got a friend that fits the stereotypes of those people tweeting. If you really don't have a brain for yourself and you the type that want to fit in, being a minority in a predominantly white space will do that to you. You know what I'm saying? Like we see the raccoons in the black community. Like it's so many. Like it's crazy now. I see what the Asians like on Twitter, what they got going on, man. That is wild. And I see that all the time. Like I've been seeing so many videos on my TikTok of other Asians speaking out about their internalized racism. And I want to say this as a white person, bro, you do not have to feel bad to be white. Like my point in these videos is just to show y'all that being European and white is like the standard. It's been the standard for a very long time. And nowadays you got white people be like, oh, we're suppressed. We're not they're only feeling bad because we just want to be recognized as well. Equality feels like oppression to these people. It's just crazy. I think the game came out, the Ghost of Tsushima sequel. The character was an Asian woman, and you had people mad. I mean, they was about to not buy the game, and it's like, bro, well, how many games do we have with a white male protagonist? Nobody says anything. We just play the game. We enjoy it. Like Last of Us.
Forget the games, white male protagonists in games. Who remembers that movie, The Last Samurai? And I love this movie, by the way. Big fan of Tom Cruise. Okay, he's never really in a bad movie. Let's be totally honest with you. Tom Cruise knows how to pick a good movie. But you know, a movie about The Last Samurai, and The Last Samurai is a white dude. Now it's a great movie, but the fact of the matter is we are very, very, very oversaturated with white male protagonists existing in places where they do not belong. And I don't need to talk about movies about the ancient world and ancient civilizations ranging from ancient Egypt, Kemet, to, you know, ancient Greece, ancient Rome. You know, recently watched the Gladiator 2 movie, and Caracalla, they gave him bright red hair and like pale. This was a North African, the son of Septimus Servius, I think it was the son of Septimus. Correct me if I'm incorrect there. But he was the son of a North African Roman emperor, and they had him as a white boy with red, they even put powder on their skin. Like it was like the most bizarre and stupid casting you could ever make. And obviously they spoke with the most strong English accents you've ever heard. It's like, what the hell is this? And then the actual son, sorry, spoiler alert, the son of the gladiator, Marcus Aurelius, whatever his name, I can't remember what it is, but it's the son of the gladiator, who they called the North African, was a white man. It's like, well, why the hell are you calling him the North African? How is he different to the Spaniard? And even the Spaniard being a white man at that date and age is factually incorrect. So let's be frank with you, yeah? White people with Scottish and English accents were not the predominant force of the ancient world running ancient societies with pale skin in the Sahara. Okay, just be realistic. Okay, we are saturated, and the fact that people are now essentially, I wouldn't even say the pushback has been that much, but now has been that big. But now that there's more inclusion of non-whites, you're seeing the reaction of white male fragility now just kind of like go through the roof. That it's like, oh my god, how dare you feature anybody else that's not a white male in any area of significance. It's like, guys, just grow the hell up. Yeah, strap on a pair, stop being so damn fragile. All right. It was only white supremacy was always going to be fine, right? It was only going to last a matter of time. And then after that, as the media becomes more democratized, people will start saying, well, this doesn't make sense. So I'm sorry that your world where everyone of significance in any historical time has always been white is crumbling before your eyes. But that doesn't mean that you're being oppressed. It just means that history is being corrected. So kind of get over yourselves, man, you big sissies.
Red Dead. Like, bro, we Uncharted, bro. Every pretty much game growing up is a white male protagonist. So when I see games like, you know, GTA 5, I get to play with Franklin, I'm happy. You know, it's just representation. We can't have representation. So yeah, man, I feel like it's important that if you're a minority and you got these type of people in your community, bro, check them, because it's only going to make things worse. Nobody likes to kiss up. No one likes to kiss up, bro. I thought this was something that was kind of just mainly prominent in the black community, but as I'm seeing, it's y'all got a lot of shit to deal with too, bro. Y'all got to come up with a name for them. Like I said, we call them raccoons. You know what I'm saying? We got a whole bunch of names for them, bro. But
so there you go. That's the video, man. Like I said, Antonio Talks, great video. Check out his channel. And I would say, just in closing, I don't think that Asians have the same problem with coonery in their communities as we do. I think they do have a problem with white supremacy, but I don't think it's the same issue there. White supremacy, once again, tends to focus on being anti-black as opposed to being anti-Asian. So I wouldn't say they have the same problem with coonery, like, because within our community we have a problem with white supremacy, but they also are only anti-black, but they're not really anti-other communities. So I think there's difference in what's taken place in the Asian community. My personal feedback is that I think they've got a problem with their own self-image, which is bizarre, because there's a lot to admire that's come out of Asia. But I think they've got a problem with their self-image and the way that projects into Western culture. And until a lot of them deal with that conflict of the fact that they're not proud of, you know, the aspects of Asian culture that aren't harmonious with ideals of Western culture, until they deal with that, they're going to keep running into the same problem. That's kind of my feedback. That's my perspective. I'm probably missing out a whole load, but heck, this is the King Mono Show. It's React Slop. So just deal with it as it comes. Peace.